In the last section, we saw how we can implement BDD with SpecFlow in our RestSharp API automation framework, where we were passing the data from the feature files, like here you can see. But various times what will happen, you will have complex JSON payloads which cannot be managed from the feature file. So in that case, what we can do, we can add those JSON files in our solution and read the JSON, and then we can pass as a payload. So let us see how we can do this implementation in this current framework. First thing what we have to do, let us create a folder, and in the test project I can go and add a new folder called test data, and I'll create a payload here, and for that I need to create a JSON file, and I can go and add a JSON file, and I can say create user. All right, a JSON structure will be created. So in place of these, which is already automatically generated, what I can do, either I can copy the JSON payload if we have with us, we can paste here, or we can write. So for the create user endpoint, which accept like from this solution which we can see, for create user we need only two things, name and job. So this thing I can just write from here, or just copy name, and I can say Mike, and job I can say QA. So that's how we can create a JSON file, or if you have file, as I said, you can copy here, and that will walk our test data, or as a request body or payload. Now you have to take care one things, like when we add a new file, what we have to do, right click on it, go to properties, and copy to output directory. So we have currently it is do not copy selected. What we have to do, copy always, select this copy always, so that whenever program compiles before running, all these files will be copied to the output directory, so that at runtime this file can be read. Okay, otherwise we may not get this file. Fine. The question is how we will read this file, JSON file which we added. So we have to do the read the file, and then we have to convert into the object, data transfer object or model, right? So for that purpose, what I can do, I can, in this handle content in utility class, what I can create a method, and I can say public static, and I'll make it a generic, okay, and say parse JSON, and I'll pass the file name here, okay, and I have to say this as well with angle brackets, okay. Now I have to write one line of code utilizing this JSON convert, okay. This class has method deserialize object, and whatever the object I'm passing I can mention here. So I'm writing a generic method which will be applicable for any kind of model or data transfer object, and then I have to read the file. So I can use the file and I have to import this from system.io, and it has one method, read all text. Okay, so I can pass the file name here. Fine. So whatever the object type I want to return, so I will just return this deserialize object of the JSON file. So I will write the keyword return here, and that only one line of code we need to read the JSON file. Now let us move to our feature file and modify this our payload, because now we don't want to pass this data from the feature file. So what I can say, I can delete this. You given user with, okay, what I can say, I can mention here user is or I can say user payload, or you can write according to your requirement user payload, and I can mention the file name here, and the JSON file name is create user.json. Okay, so given user payload, okay, send the request to create user and validate user is created. So that is the line. I have, there are the steps I have to write. Now I have to generate this. So either I can manually write, or I can say generate a step definition. So here I can get only, I change the first line. So I'm just getting, I can copy this to clipboard. I'll not generate. Open the step definition file. And in place of this, let us just put here, I'll paste this. Okay. So we are passing the payload from here. So I'll just say it file name. Okay. And then I will write here all the logics here. So we'll pass the file name here. So whatever the file name we are passing from the JSON, okay, we have to read it. So we have to write a method which gets the path of this file, because our program will require like the path so that it can read. Okay. So according to changes, we have to delete these methods, whatever we wrote earlier. Okay, because currently we change the payload, a feature file, I mean. All right. So as I said, our method will require the file path. Okay. So how we can get the file path? So let us go to our utility, and you can create a class. We can name it as utility class, or same as, or it depends. Or I can utilize this the same handle content. Okay, so let us not create a separate class. I'll write it here. So what we have to do, again, I'll create a static class, a static method, I mean, and return type will be the file path, so it will be a string, and name I can provide get file path. Okay, and file name I'll pass here. Okay, so we have to utilize this path from where we will, so it is also part of system.io.path, which has methods to get the path of the file. So I can utilize this get full path, okay, returns the absolute path of the specific path string. Okay, so that we do not have to hard code the file path. Okay, now we have to pass the path. So what we have to do, how we will get this the file path where it is located at the runtime. So what I can say, path dot combine, and then app domain dot current domain dot base directory. Okay, and this will return. So I have to store, okay, string path. Okay, now this will return like where is the base directory, but we have to concatenate with the our the file name which we will pass. Okay, so either you can create a new variable or I can just update the string variable which I created. Okay, and I can say string dot format path which I'm getting from here. Okay, and then where I have kept this file, I have kept this under test data. Okay, and I have to combine this file name. So what I can do, as I'm using this string format, so I can use, okay, this way, and the name of the file as a name which I'm passing in this method, and I'll return this path. Fine. So that will give me the path, and then I have to pass that file path to this method to read that file and deserialize into objects. Okay, so first thing, let us get the file path, and I can say handle content, yeah, dot get file path, and this requires file name. So I'll pass the file name which I'm passing from feature file. Okay, and this file path I have to pass to the handle content dot parse JSON. Okay, and this require a class or model. Okay, so here I'll pass this file, and we have to deserialize into the create user request, right? Because we are creating using this model. So create user, right? And this will return me an object. So I can say as a var payload, or we can say create user because that is the model name. Fine. So now what we have to do, we have to pass this file, I mean this payload, what the this parse JSON has returned to this method. But how we will share the data between the steps, right? Because this is one method and this is part of the given step, and where we are calling the create user method, which where we are passing the payload, it is in a different method. So how we can share the data between these steps? So that's why to share the data, we can use this scenario context. Okay, as I have explained about the scenario context, why I have added here, so let us utilize this. Okay, one more thing, the change is what we can do is move this to the constructor of this create user. So let us move it, and that we don't require to create this object if any other steps required to get this object of this API client. Okay, so I'll move it here, API client, and I can say API, or you can say client. Okay, and move this line of code from here to this constructor, and then we don't require this line of code. Okay, so that one change we need to do. We have to share this payload to the when steps, like the below step. Okay, so how we can share the data. So utilizing this scenario context dot, we can add it. Okay, so we have to provide into the key value pairs. Okay, so what I can say name as create user payload, or simply payload also I can say, but I'm just keeping a different name for your so that you can identify, and the value is payload. Okay, now I have to get this payload into this step. So how I can get? So using the scenario context itself dot get, and I have to mention the path of this, sorry, the name which we given here. So that is create user payload. I can pass it here. Okay, and this requires to specify like what type of you can see here the type argument of method SpecFlow cannot be inferred from the usage. Try specifying the argument explicitly. Okay, so we have to mention here, and suppose this is a specific type it be, so it I can say create user. Okay, and here I can okay, so what I'm doing, first I pass the file name from the feature file, which I'm passing to getting the path of this. Okay, storing into the file variable. Then I'll pass this file to the parse JSON, a method which created to deserialize into the objects. So this method will return me a object of create user request. Then I have to share that this payload, because we are sending the data request into the next step. Okay, so I have to share this payload with other steps. So what I can do, I can use this scenario context and add, and then here I can get using the name, key name, which I have provided earlier, and get this payload. And then this payload I'll pass to the create user method. So that's what we have to do. So let us see if have done everything here. So what we did, we added a JSON file, we modified the feature file, we wrote few methods to read the file path and then read the JSON file from that particular path and share the payload, whatever we are getting from the JSON file, to the other steps. Okay. One more thing, if you want to update anything in this payload, okay, so suppose after reading the JSON file, if you want to update, so what you can do, you can update here itself, like payload dot, okay, So suppose we have two property. If you have more properties, so a specific property, if you want to update, you can update here. Okay, so you can do this way as well. After reading the JSON file, if you want to update any value, you can update any particular value like this, and that's it. And that will be passed to the request as a payload. So I hope you found this useful.